You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Hello, and welcome to not the Sunday show. If you were confused again, we're keeping you on your toes, and now you don't know what happens on a Wednesday anymore. So, myself and James took over the Wednesday show because we had some vital information to talk about in terms of overreaching, I think is what we called it. Is that what we called it?
Yeah.
Purposeful overreaching?
Purposeful overreaching.
Good podcast. I think it's like a concept that maybe like some people haven't. You've probably heard of it before. Maybe, I don't know. Is it a common term? I think overtraining is obviously a common term. Like that's something that gets thrown around a lot.
I don't think it's a general term that's utilized. Like in some spaces, probably like your spaces. Maybe it is a little bit.
Anyone in my space has ever known what purposeful overreaching is. I think that's just like training like an idiot.
But maybe in some high caliber
athletes,
sport specific training.
But
it's not a common term.
Yeah, not a common term. Possibly your first introduction to it. We give some kind of like practical examples. We give some takeaways, I guess. I guess that's practical examples. Takeaways from like how it could possibly be utilized, where it could be utilized, when not to utilize it. We definitely go into like when not to utilize it and like how I've previously utilized it and just currently utilized it in some of my training blocks right now. But it kind of goes down into, once again, like a practical and like a principle based application of like, when is this going to be applicable? When is this not going to be applicable? And we kind of set out some guidelines around how to determine certain characteristics of it. So it's a good podcast from that side, in my opinion, not to toot my own horn as we were, but good podcast from that side. You hopefully get some takeaways. I always say this, but I think I always say this, so I should probably always say this. First 10 minutes is usually just me talking about something that then gets us into it. I can't remember if I went really rogue on the first 10 minutes. I went somewhere.
Right.
Did I?
You get you declare war on a certain state for coffee.
All right.
And you ruin tacos. That's the first 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, if you can make it through that, I highly suggest you make it through that, because I feel like that's the entertaining part. And then you get to kind of the educational side, or like the stuff that matters. Not that the other stuff doesn't matter, because I think it does matter significantly, especially if you're trying to find really good coffee in states in Australia. So on that note, let's pay some bills. PSL 1, a week out? 7 days?
Yeah, it's about a week out, yeah.
Man, I can't believe we're through another semester already. Feels like yesterday. Feels like yesterday we met. We met on PSL 1. I think it was the second iteration of the online, if I remember correctly. Second? First?
Because if January 2019.
2019 or 2020? 2020. 19?
Yeah, because it was right whenever I came back to Kansas.
Couldn't have been 19. I don't know. I'm sure it's not 19. I'm sure it's 20. I'm sure it was 2020. I think it's 2020 because I don't think we had the... Anyways, whatever. We met then, and that was pretty much it.
It's just been a bromance since.
It's just been a bromance since. It's just like, I was like, he's got the same name as me. He's got to be a good guy. That's as simple as it is, and we've just kind of gone from there. But the actual thing, other than possibly meeting lifelong friends, which, all jokes aside, is probably one of the big takeaways from PSL 1, is like the community aspect, the interactive labs, or like the coaches that interact with each other. Like, we've seen a massive emergence of like people or students who take our courses, who interact with each other, who land up like just going and training with each other, like driving states. We had Saluji, shout out Saluji. We had Saluji travel from the UK to Canada without his parents knowing, if I remember correctly. I think his mom didn't know. And he just like got on a plane and just flew to Canada to hang out with a whole bunch of coaches. And I was just like, sick. But that's like, and that's part of like, I don't expect you to fly across the world, but there's a whole bunch of like the Prescript community and like the constant interactions that we see go on in the Discord channel, which you get access to when you join the course. It's like just conversations of like, hey, like I'm going to be in wherever, Tampa, or I'm going to be in Miami, God forbid, but going to be there. It's like, who's keen for a training session? What gyms are cool? Like some of the guys are like, I've got clients in that are moving. Is there any PSL coaches? Is there anyone who can help me out with stuff like this? And it's those little things that I think really make the value add of like what we do, along with teach you, applied biomechanics and functional anatomy. It's a 16 to 20 week course on like how the body functions and like resistance profiles, going through like our trademarks, mobility, stability, strength. Sorry, choking on my own spit there. Mobility, stability, strength, and like the 3 peripheral hubs of stability, and teaching you assessments and teaching you all of these things. But at the same time, it's networking, it's being exposed to like-minded individuals, and it's really pushing the envelope of trying to increase the standard of coaching in the industry. And it's amazing to see how it kind of just like becomes tenfold with every semester that comes through. Like the new cohort comes in, and like the old guard like takes them up. It's kind of like I kind of want to like refer back to Hogwarts. Like when the first years kind of come in, and like the what are they called? Like the 7th years or whatever they are. They're the like headmaster and the boys or whatever. The heads of school, like, or the heads of houses. That's what it is. Like take them through and take them to the common room and show them the common room. It's like the same type of thing happens. It's like you come in, you get off the train, you somehow find the platform of whatever, what's his name in 3/4. You've got on the train that takes you across. You've beat the Dementors to some extent, and then you get us, and your life changes forever, literally. But I think it's been such a life-changing community and a life-changing experience with like every single coach to be able to speak to. That's the value on top of becoming a better coach, on top of all the education side that I think you'll get from it. So that is up for sale. www.pre-script.com. Jump on that. Big thing that we always kind of try and remember to mention is like there are payment plans available. That does make cash flow a lot easier. If you're running a business, if you've got businesses that are helping you out and helping you, like your gym is helping pay for your increase in education. It's like show them that offer, help them from that side, give them the opportunity to help you learn more from that by going through these payment plans. Like we've tried to make it as accessible as we can for everyone, because we do really want to elevate the standard, I guess. So payment plans are available. You've also got the full-time payment. As soon as it comes to, you get access to the manual, you get access to the to the collective with our Discord channel with, I don't know, 12 or 15 different threads going on. It's a good time. Come join us, come hang. We got the labs that we do every week. I don't know, 6, 8 of them, somewhere along those lines. I can't remember. There's too many. But it's a great time. Come hang with us, come learn, and come just be a better coach. Hear myself properly. I'm pretty sure this is the headphone set that we got the message about, saying that like I think someone dunked soy sauce in it, or it got dunked in soy sauce or something. So for those who don't know, because none of you would know, we got an email from Dear Lundy saying that we think one of the headphone sets got, I think his words were, it sounds like it exploded. Someone either spilled or it's been dunked in pre-workout or soy sauce, because that's all that used to be on the table where all the headphones used to be back in Miami.
Could be a nice combination of both.
It probably is.
Lundy, if you're listening to this, we apologize.
I apologize. And he hasn't said it again in a while, so I feel like it's kind of working. I don't know. That table saw some things. The table saw like me making pre-workout concoctions, the amount of food that was eaten on there. There was Taco Tuesdays, which became Taco Every Day. Shout out, Tess. Thank you for just feeding us. It was amazing.
You can't go wrong with a good taco.
No, dude. It was amazing. It was at one stage I was trying to sell it as a business idea in the building. It's like we're just gonna make the room like room number. I can't even remember what it was, like 20 something or whatever it was. It's like it was just gonna be the taco stand within the building, and we're just gonna make. Dude, they were so good. It made life. It made the meat and rice that we were eating exactly the same, because I used to put everything the same just in a hard shell taco, and I was like, oh, sick! It's like a whole new meal instead of eating beef or bison and rice like 5 times a day. There was now beef and rice. It was bison, rice, a hard shell taco. You got to do this. She taught me this one. This is actually legit. And then I butchered it slightly with barbecue sauce. But what you do is you go. I know. You go bison.
Okay.
Yeah, dude.
We'll just skip past that.
Okay, we'll just skip. It's like an American style taco thing. I don't know. I like sauce, dude. I realized like condiments. That's my
Barbecue
vice,
sauce, though?
dude. It was so good. It was the Stubbs sugar-free barbecue sauce. Oh, dude. I reckon that's my kryptonite there. Not blondes. Barbecue sauce. Right there. Barbecue sauce.
Just had to come to America to find.
Oh, dude, if it was sold to me by a blonde, I'd buy a carton. However many you want. Whatever you want. If there was like one of those promo girls like in Costco or something, like standing there with like the Stubbs, and this is not sexist or anything, I do apologize if you don't take it this way, but they're not. Anyways, promo girl, because it has
Mac
to be a
just
blonde
likes
girl
a
for
good
me.
deal. That's all.
Yeah, I really do. And if a good deal's being sold to me by a blonde, like I'm done. I'm game over. It's ready to go. So we did bison, the stuff, I don't know, red pepper, yellow pepper. For the Australians, bell peppers. Dude, this country's so weird. They don't even call it like a different name. They just call it a bell pepper. And then they'll bring out like a yellow one. I'm like, yeah, that's a yellow pepper. And they're like, no. It's called a capsicum. It's called a capsicum. They call it capsicum here. But capsicum's a general term. Yeah, it's like a red pepper or like a yellow, but we call it by the color that it is. Funny that. In Australia, they just call it a capsicum. And I'm like, how do I know which one it is? Am I getting the sweet one, which is the yellow one? Or am I getting the red one, which is the not sweet one? And then there's a green one that's spicy-ish, but not. I don't know. Anyway, so I get the whole like capsicum bell pepper thing that she mixed up. Some onions that were in there. What was I saying? Oh, so she did the taco. I put put the bison in there, a little bit of salt. Then you got to do hard taco shell. You put it in that, and you put the guac and all that type of shit. You put the bison in. You put the capsicum, bell peppers. Then you put the onions. Then you take a soft taco, and you put that whole thing in the middle of a soft taco, and you close it up. And then I would sprinkle barbecue sauce on for 2 reasons. One, I really like barbecue sauce, as we've established. And 2, the barbecue sauce would stick it together. So now you've kind of got like what's the pizza thing called when they flop a pizza? They put a pizza on top of a pizza? Carbone or some shit like that?
Calzone?
Calzone. Close enough. Calzone. So now I've got a calzone type barbecue sauced bison taco. Legit. I think it was the perfect combination of like crunchy and taco and barbecue spice. It was amazing. That was heaven in a calzone. I ruined
taco recipe.
I ruined so many different like cultures of food there. It was like Italian kind of with the pizza, Mexican barbecue sauce. I feel like it's not a culture, but it's just gonna go with Texan. That's not a culture, but it's Texan. Barbecue sauce, I think, like Texas. That's all I really think about for some reason. Mashed it all together.
There's a couple states that will fight for the best barbecue sauce. Texas, KC, Kentucky. Like, you don't care. You just like the barbecue sauce.
I just like the Stubbs one that comes from Target. The sugar-free Stubbs one. It was so good. It was really good. I'm pretty sure I can find it somewhere here, but it's super expensive. Anyways, how was your weekend?
Anybody coming on to this and
Yeah.
wondering why you're hearing us talk about tacos?
I mean, yeah, this is a fitness podcast to some extent. Dude, I went to Melbourne and just got to try food. So Melbourne is one of the states in Australia. If you don't know this, you know this now. Fun fact, Melbourne is supposed to be the coffee hub of the world, or like coffee central. Shit. Dog shit. Worst coffee I've ever had in my entire life. And
this
I
is
legit...
a man that has tried his coffee.
Yeah, and okay, fair enough. So many people who live in Melbourne gave me so much shit for the stories that I put up about it because I was upset. Dude, the one day I tried 6 different coffee places. Every single one of them tasted like cat piss, and I was like, I can't. I actually threw it away. I was so upset by the fact that I couldn't find a good coffee. Then I get told, like, go and find this, whatever it was, this one place. I'm like, okay, sweet. Like, this is your one chance to redeem yourself, Melbourne.
Yeah.
I've had
Redeem
2
the
days
whole
worth
state.
of... Yeah. This is it. This is all depending on one coffee shop. I've had 2 days of just, like, disgusting. I could have made better coffee with Rick Coffee. Now, if you don't know what Rick Coffee is coffee from back in South Africa that is like granule coffee, but think the lowest of lowest, cheap. It doesn't even have grains that it's ground. It's like sawdust type of coffee. Like it's so thinly ground that it's sawdust. All right, it's terrible. It tastes amazing if you put about 5 scoops in there and about 10 scoops of sugar. And that's what I used to have when I was on shift back in South. And it's cheap as chips. It's like it would get sold in the townships. That's how good it was. Like not good. Sorry, that sounds terrible. But it was like the staple coffee of South Africa. You could find Rick Coffee anywhere. Type scenario. It's not an expensive brand. It just is around. Anyways, Rick Coffee would have been better than what I fucking had at all the places. So the Sunday or the Monday, everyone's hounded me for the whole weekend about, like, I have to go to this place. I don't know what I'm talking about. So fine, we go to this place. Bro, it's fucking 8:30 in the morning. The coffee shop's closed. What coffee shop is closed at 8:30 in the morning on a Monday? Excuse me. I don't care if you do, like, the sun only rises at 7:30 in this bloody state. You open at 6. Good coffee shops are open at 6. There's a line outside. There must be a barista with a face tattoo of some sort, and like possibly a top knot. I'll accept the top knot in a coffee barista. Anyone else, don't ever do it. And that's it, dude. It was closed, and I literally was like, fine. So I went right next door to the McDonald's, and I got McDonald's coffee, and it was the best cup of coffee that I had the entire weekend. So you know what? Shout out Mackie D's. Mackie D's. Mackie D's. Yeah, just burning everything.
Declaration of war.
Mackie D's coffee for the win. They even did an almond cap for me with some vanilla in it. It was amazing. It was the best thing that I've had. It was fantastic. Left a happy man because of McDonald's. All right, fun fact for the day. So Melbourne is really shit coffee apparently, but that's besides the point. We ate lots of food. It was great. Had a great time in Melbourne. Lots of training, lots of food.
Yeah, I was going to say, you went there for some training purposes.
Yeah, so went down for like a combination of, like, I don't know, I've been home for 4 weeks and I wanted to leave already. So decided to go into country this time. Went to Melbourne with Matt, my training partner, the guy I spoke about last time. We had like a bit of a boys' weekend, food, big training, planned 3 really big sessions at 3 really big gyms down in Melbourne. And I think, like, part of the conversation that I wanted to have and part of the thought process behind all this was I obviously knew this was coming up because I planned it and I booked everything. But the idea behind it was I knew that I was going to have 3 consecutive very, very big sessions because, you know, when in Melbourne, went to like the mecca of gyms, went to a gym called One Gym, which is fantastic. Went to another gym called Doherty's, which is like run by the godfather of bodybuilding in Australia, Tony Doherty. So it was a great experience, great trim, but I knew like training sessions were going to be big. You kind of go to iconic places like that, you're going to have big sessions. I trained with some really good guys. And the idea behind it was, okay, sweet. I'm going to make sure that I lead up my training into this a little bit more effectively so that I could purposely try and overreach. Now, periods of purposeful overreaching, I think, can be extremely effective within training and within like programming your stuff out. Essentially, you're trying to flog yourself and trying to break yourself to then knowing that you have a time period on the back end of it where you're going to be able to recover and you're going to be able to just like not train, for example. So why I was able to do this is like he's lying somewhere over here. The furry golden seal got the snip. So I knew that I was going to be out for like at least 3 to 4 days because I got to look after him and like I don't really want to be leaving the house and letting him lick at the sutures and stuff. So my idea was timed this perfectly. I was like, I'm going to do a period of like purposeful overreach on the weekend. Really big training sessions, like really push it. Food was up high. Everything was up high so we could have like the best sessions that we could from a performance standpoint, knowing that I was going to absolutely wreck myself and go through a wall so that I've got 3 to 4 days of essentially my recovery. It's like, and what we tend to find when we see something like this is I could and I will, like I accrued so much inflammation from the weekend. It was disgusting. I can see it visually. I can see it in the scale weight. I could see it in digestion. I could see it in like all of the things that we start to see with proper overtraining. Now, I think overtraining in itself gets a bit of not a bad rap, but I don't think people know what overtraining actually is.
I
think like a lot of people think
generally.
Yeah, that's it. It kind of gets the shotgun approach of like overtraining. It's like overtraining is sometimes difficult to do, and there's signs and symptoms when you overtrain. It's like my recovery's dog shit. I didn't sleep at all. Restless overnight from Friday till Monday, like all three, even last night, so Monday night, like into today. Last 4 days, sleep has been atrocious. One of the big ones, like digestion, goes for me. I'll have I know what happens when I push myself too hard. It's like I'll have real bad problems going to the bathroom. It's like, dude, I can like shit through the eye of a needle when things are really bad. Like it's that's the graphic you all wanted, but essentially it's like
the graphic. To that.
But that's it. Like the idea behind it is like I know what works. I know what my body starts to signal when I've just pushed too hard from that side. I'm not digesting food. I'm not getting the nutrients absorption from that side. So it's like, okay, I've really redlined it for the last 3 days purposefully. Oh, wait, knowing that I'm going to spend the next 3 to 4 days doing that, stopping him from licking his sutures. And what I'll see by the end of this and what I've seen in the past by the end of this, like I will drop all that information. I'll probably drop a good couple kilograms. And I'll probably look a lot leaner at the end of it as well. So I say there's periods of times where purposeful overreaching is an effective tool within programming to allow like not a resensitization, but you can use it as like a resensitization. You can use it if you know you're going away on holiday. You know you're going to have a time period where you're going to be a lot less stressed. You're not going to train. You're probably going to do very basic movements. It's like it's a very effective tool when knowing these time periods and knowing how to utilize it effectively.
Yeah, and that effective utilization can be important. It's one of those that you mentioned, like vacation. It can be a great one for vacation that the gym shouldn't be pulling you away from the purpose of your vacation, to spend time with family, to relax, to do all these things. Like the point is outside of like a competition where if you are preparing for a competition, probably not the right time to vacation. But besides that, that it can be an approach to take off that one other aspect whenever you're moving, whenever you're training, whenever you're doing. Anybody that's not seeing the video, just watching the golden seal with his stuffed bear. But but yeah, there can be purpose and utilization to it in planning that out. So can you break down kind of the thought process going into it, but also how you would look at like big training? Like how is that going to differ from what your typical training is? How's that going to be a greater stimulus that you're sending than what you typically are used to? Because I know one aspect to it, anybody that's listening and thinking about how to define like what's going to be a bigger training session. So I know for like one aspect that you guys were doing some content. So the training session is just going to go longer. The duration is going to be a lot longer. You're probably like some reps and sets are sneaking in a little extra than what would usually be because you have to redo some stuff. You have to re-explain some things. So, just the accumulation of that buildup. But what are some other aspects that you might look to define as like big training? So anybody that's listening can think about if this qualifies as that, or if this is just same old training stimulus and not to a greater degree in stress accumulated outside of the gym session.
So I think the first thing that needs to be reminded is like this is not like my home turf. So the first thing is like I'm already out of routine. I'm already out of cycle. Not that I didn't have to a certain degree, like foods, nutrition was pretty staple and pretty similar, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't like I didn't have the exact same meals. I could have the same similar types of things, but it wasn't the same meals. It wasn't at the same time. Gym.
You weren't getting your coffee, so automatically you're irritated.
Just fucking annoyed. But like flights were there as well, so there's some form of travel aspect. There's the aspect of like nutrition wasn't the same, hydration was different. Very different climate, Melbourne to Gold Coast from that side. So as much as I try and keep the variables as best as I can, it's like you got to understand that these things change. So that's the first thing. Second thing is like as you mentioned, it's like essentially the weekend was a content weekend. Now, if anyone has done any type of content in, like as you were mentioning, it does take longer. You land up it takes a lot longer than you think. You land up doing more of the same exercise. You land up doing bigger sets. You land up doing like more work in the grand scheme of things. And the biggest one, and I think, knowing that this was going to be the issue in the very beginning kind of allows for it to be, I don't want to say acceptable, but also again understand that this is part of the process. It's like I trained with some really big dudes and some really fucking strong dudes. It's like, and as much as like ego, we try and avoid ego, like ego is always involved, especially when there's content, especially when there's some form of like camera, video, whatever it is from that side. Like I'll be the first one to admit it's like you step into an extra gear. Unfortunately, that's just kind of what happened. So it's like, there was maybe a set or two that I did more than what I've done before on certain things. It's like that in itself created a big accumulation of volume. There was a lot more weight, and I think probably the biggest out of all of them was the fact that patterns were the same. Everything was on a new machine. And that right there is the kicker in terms of like it's a change in stimulus. And I knew that going in. It's like I went to 3 gyms, which are the only gyms in Australia right now that have prime equipment.
So you're just a kid in a candy shop.
I'm just a kid in the candy. So the one gym had so many different pieces of equipment, and I kept to the regular. Like we could play on the the horizontal prime row and the extreme row, and it was a back session. It was cool. They had the Nautilus like single arm pull down. It's like all of these things it's the same pattern that I would run, and like the structure around the training was the exact same. I go from more like a horizontal pull into a low reach and finishing off with something in like the high overhead. It's like it just was all on very different machines with a load accumulation that is significantly more than what I'm used to because I don't have those tools at my disposal. I don't have a Nautilus pull down that I can get on. Do you know what I have? I have a cable. Like just that alone, like going from a cable stack to the Nautilus, like I've got Nautilus to a plate loaded. I had 4 plates on there. Like it's fucking heavy. versus whatever cable stack, and like the resistance changed, and there was a significant difference in stimulus that was acquired. And it was, some really big dudes shouting you at the same time to make sure that you get more reps out. I was like, I'm dying type scenario. So again, all my fault, all 100% accounted for though. Like I knew that this was going to be the concern when I was going into this weekend. And that's why I almost put my foot down and went harder into the sessions, because I knew that was the purpose of it. The purpose of the last 4 days within the week, or from the weekend till now, was to accrue as much damage, as much fatigue, as much training volume as I could, so I could take the next 4 to 5 days off, to be 100% honest. It's like that was the intention. It's like I went bigger, I went harder, I went more. I kept everything. Every exercise was essentially the same pattern as I would when I travel and when I kind of create things. I just went more. So the intensity and the overall volume was that much harder and that much higher within everything. I think that to me is what I would define as a more intense session, or the intensity being that much higher.
Yeah, and because there's a couple key points in that I think is important to identify. First and foremost is it was planned. It was, as you said, intentional overreaching, because you knew the time coming up post that you had dedicated time to recover from the stress accumulation, from the damage created, to essentially find homeostasis again, to allow your physiology to adapt and recover. And whenever you start reintroducing the stimulus, it's going to be more so in line of what your typical training is, a lot more controlling the variable than what you had previously done. But there was a lot of planning and building up to that, and post. So anybody thinking about utilizing that strategy, that it has to be the before and after considerations to be able to utilize it effectively and be able to not make it detrimental to your program. The other side with that is that you still followed the routine, but in the acceptance of that overreach, you allowed yourself to still play within the parameters. Because with Prime, if you used any of the plate loaders, one of the big aspects of it is they have different areas that you can load the plates, and absolutely you utilize that. You didn't keep it on
100%.
one. You're like, I'm putting these plates all over. I'm going to mess with where the strength curve is. I'm going to overload areas that don't necessarily get that exact same overload. And so in that, it's a brand new stimulus that you're creating, that it kind of hits on all the things that we'll talk about in courses of don't do all of these things all at once, the intensity, the reps, the sets, but it's in a very confined or constrained space of time that you're allowing for that. It's not something that you take with you and carry it on to future sessions, because that's just going to destroy you. This is the appropriate time and place for this to be done, and then I'm leaving it here. I'm not trying to take these training sessions or replicate these over and over, because that's going to be a lot of fatigue to the system, but also it's a lot of overall intensity that is very limited in its ability to continue to progress long term.
Yeah, and I think, as you mentioned, all of this has been planned. There's been a lead up to this. So the last 2 weeks before this as well, I didn't just go from, call it 80%. I don't know how to give it a percentile, but I didn't go from all of my sessions been running at 80% to this weekend of purposely overreaching at 110%. I've been ramping things up throughout the last 2 weeks, probably 10 days to 2 weeks, so that when it's still building the accumulation. There's a subtle hint of everything kind of building up. I took 2 extra days off before my Friday, and then I went in fresh as I could to push it as hard as I could for the 3 days of training. It's like I was cramping in my quads from my pull day. Just to understand like what's going on from that perspective. It's like I was creating so much global tension by putting myself in positions and trying to essentially create as much intensity and like just overall tension that I finished my pull day, which took, dude, the session was 3.5 hours. Every training session was 3.5 to 4 hours. I went through 3 Gatorades, like 3-liter Gatorades on the pull session. I was putting, like I was wearing a gray Muscle Nation vest or whatever it was, and like 3/4 of it turned to a dark gray from the amount of fluid that I had like just sweated out. It's like it's an understand, like that's what we're talking about. Like so many variables changed, time duration changed, machines changed. Like I was pushing things to the extra limit. It's like as much food as I was getting in, it's like nothing was replenishing myself to the level that I needed to be at that side. It's like we were hoovering in food, but everything hurt to the point of like finished training, went home, had a nap because I couldn't function. So I had a nap for 45 minutes, and when I got up from my nap, I fell over because my legs seized up. Okay, can just understand, like I didn't train legs this whole weekend. My legs have got DOMs. That is how, like, and that's the whole, like, again, I think there's a time and a place for this. It's like, I'd love to be able to train like that all the time, but I die. I don't have the
body's not going to sustain it.
My body's not going to sustain that. I don't have the recovery tools in place to do that. I don't, like, you could do that if you wake up, eat food, nap. Wake up, eat food, nap. And then go train for 3 hours and then come home and nap and eat food like that. You know, that's when you're starting to optimize on recovery. That's like at a professional level of some sort. Like there's everything involved
unfortunately, nobody's sponsoring your workout.
Hell no. At the point that I went through, the Gatorade should have given me a sponsor because fuck me, I went through so much Gatorade, dude. Gatorade, and then I was just chugging down coconut waters, like just to try and replenish. Anyway, so the idea is like, again, all of it was planned, all of it was there. Like I knew that this was going to happen to the point of I booked him in for his surgery. An hour later, I was getting a massage so that I could then, like, today's a recovery day. This is the first set of the recovery tools. Like, today's a recovery day completely. I had a massage. It's like at the end of the week before I go back into things, like I'm going to go to one of these stupid fucking magnesium float tanks and hopefully not go crazy in a quiet float tank. But like that's the idea. Is like I've tried to put everything in place to recover in this time period because that's what I'm utilizing it for. Like, you know what I've done with my diet? I've cleaned everything up significantly. I've pushed my fats through the roof. Why? Because fats help with inflammation. It's like, so my fats are up through the roof. I'm getting in really like high omega-3 based stuff to bring down all the inflammation as best as I can. I've set everything up knowing that there was a past and a future around this whole phase of like, I'm going to overreach this significantly. And then from there, it's like I have a new continued training block coming through on the back end of this. It's like I also use this to a certain degree to like test myself. It's like, am I not training at the intensity that I should be training at? It's like I maintain 3 training sessions at a significantly high intensity. Now, honestly, way too much intensity. Way too much. But in comparison to maybe where I have been, it kind of was a bit of a wake-up call of like, okay, you've taken your foot off the pedal a bit again. It's like it's time to like increase, maybe take things up 10% instead of 30%. It's like you have that gear there clearly. So it's like, don't forget to like use that gear. And it was a nice like reminder. And I think overreaching periods can sometimes remind us, like overreaching or overreaching training or purposeful overreaching, I think is like, I was going to say the manly, but let's not use that word. The true version of the ice bath. Because the ice bath, in my opinion, is the stupidest recovery tool. Because then everyone knows this. It's a stupid recovery tool. It's a really good mental challenge. to sit in cold water and freeze your dick off is a really good mental challenge, or under appendages, whatever you have. But like, it's really good mentally. Overreaching, like knowing that you've got to train for 3 to 4 days, 5 days straight at like that maximal intensity, dude, that takes you to another place mentally. It allows you to kind of tap into this other side of like, I was so sore when I woke up for day 3. I was like, how the fuck am I going to train again? And you know what? I got on a little Lime scooter and I scooted to the gym for 45 minutes, an electric scooter, and I had the best time. And I shotgunned a pre-workout, like a double pre-workout and a Ghost energy drink. And I got it done.
Just a man on a mission.
A man on a mission, but that was it. Like, that was the purpose behind all this. Like, it's mentally, it's like, how far can I push myself? How deep can I take things? How hard can I push things? How close to the sun can I fly? And like, can I fly slightly into the sun and come out of it and maybe like put glue back on my wings and like repair my shit and then be okay to go again in about 4 to 5 days? Like, it's a test. That's what this was. And like, I think they can be very, very beneficial. Don't just go out and purposely overreach though. You got to plan the shit. It's not something that I tell everyone to do because it's difficult. It's hard. It sucks. Everything hurts. Like, at the stage, dude, you saw now when we got on the call, like I put my arm over my head and my bicep cramped. It's like, that's a problem. Fun fact. I mean, I've already spilled half my dirty laundry on this, but it's like, there was a stage after the pull day. It's like I went to wipe my bum and my lat cramped. Do you know how like demoralizing that is? It's like, dude, I couldn't. It wasn't because I had no rotation. I was so pumped up and had so much contractile tissue going on that I turned and my lat went, nope. And I couldn't. And I stood there and I was like, fuck. What do I do now? So, you know, dude, I had to like breathing drill my way into being able to wipe my bum because I had to like
just get a little bit of room,
like a slow exhale to try
forced exhalation,
just to try and get it so that like my lat and then QL wouldn't lock up. It's like that's the extent of what I went to. But that's literally what happened.
It's a sign of dysfunction. Literal sign of dysfunction. That'll disrupt your day.
But that's it. I
just
literally
make
was
you
like,
rethink your life choices.
Fuck. I was just like, I got to do this again tomorrow. And that was the concerning thing. I was just like, oh. So then like the next morning I'd wake up and I'd be like, fuck, I need a shit. Am I going to cramp? Fuck, I hope I don't cramp. It's like, but that's it. That's the extent of how far I pushed it. I was smoked on all levels. I was not sleeping because literally, like, I had that restless fatigue. It's like, if you ever done, dude, you would have in school, like with wrestling, like a wrestling tournament, and you're fucked completely, and that night you don't get good sleep. Like you've actually pushed it too hard. It's like that's one of the signs of like overtraining. It's like you're restless. You've got no ability to go to sleep. You've got no ability to shut off. Everything's just fighting that system. It's like, that's what it is. That's what's going on. It's like, I didn't sleep for 4 nights, which obviously doesn't help with the like recovery and the overtraining perspective. But it's like, it's happening because of that.
And in comparison, it's like to your note about the ice bath, like it's a sign of not being able to downregulate, not being able to go from that sympathetic state that you need for the training down to a parasympathetic to be able to relax. That it's in that parasympathetic, trying to find almost like the dog in the burning room that's sitting there. That's like,
I'm fine.
Everything's fine.
No,
Like the inability to get to that. But one of the things I did like that you said is the like reflection you had on the training session to kind of, you're using that as a scale to see, hey, have I taken foot off the gas pedal? And in part of that, like it's another reason it can be beneficial because it allows you to kind of compare in that way. and understand how you were able to effectively execute it. That, hey, I do have this other gear, opposed to if you were doing it and I know, like, getting close to failure in hypertrophy and during those training sessions, or it's going to be the goal or what you're trying to reach. But if there is a notable difference, let's say you were only able to complete half of what your training partners were doing in intensity in the rep set scheme, that it'd be an identifier for you of like, hey, I don't have that second gear. I'm limited here. This is what I need to develop, opposed to saying, no, I have this second gear. I just need to tap into it a little bit more frequent to create greater availability of that, and to be able to like utilize this resource more, not necessarily more frequently, but be able to utilize it more often because it's there, or being able to push your regular training a little bit further because you've seen that additional gear. You've seen like where you are currently, that it still leaves availability to push harder. And so it's not that it has to be, I have to push this hard every single time, but scaled back. There is a gap that can be filled between like what your current training had been and what this was, that it doesn't have to be to the max in, but hey, can we increase it 10% because we have the availability of 40 more percent?
Yeah, and that's it. It's kind of like a litmus test of like, am I being a little bitch? Yeah, apparently I have been. It's like the gears that I found and the places that I was able to kind of push to, exactly like you're saying. Like, I don't want to say it's 40%, but like there was a chunk for 3 days significantly higher than what I've been able to do. It's like, okay, I clearly have taken my foot off the gear. And like, there's reasons, I've obviously come back. There's training, there's work, there's all this type of stuff, and that's fine. But I think it's, once again, I don't want to say excuses, but it's like, hey, maybe you've got to just prioritize the time of training. Maybe you need to just take that extra 30 minutes for training, for example, and like be like, I found myself in some of them, for example, it's like we were pushing so hard in intensity in a lot like our single arm movements and our unilateral movements. Dude, I took significant rest periods between my left and my right set. And like, that should be done. But a lot of times we don't do that. And we kind of like, we're still getting close to a failure point within the sets, and like from the left to the right when we do it, but we're not getting close to what I would call like muscular failure. And this is like the whole argument with like hypertrophy and like, are we finding failure, or are we finding muscular failure, or are we finding failure from an energy system that's then forcing that? It's like, it may be the fact that I just wasn't recovered from right to left, and like it was more not cardiovascular, but let's kind of fit it into the cardiovascular energy system. It's like I just wasn't recovered. I needed 30 seconds to a minute more, but because I'm rushing through things or not necessarily taking that extra time, it's like I'm not getting to true muscular failure within those sessions. Whereas because we were pushing so hard, we were trying to get those extra reps out, we had the time to kind of rest longer. It's like I was cranking out 3 to 4 more reps than what I was on similar type of patterns, similar movements at like an equivalent weight if we were, but I was just resting longer. So I was like, okay, that's muscular failure there for me. It's like, now I have a kind of a reference point, and I have like I have a reference point on what failure should be for my patterns, from a field perspective, from an like energy perspective, from a muscular perspective. It's like, it gave me a whole highlight of like, oh, this is where we need to be going again.
Well, and I like that thought process in breaking it apart, even in how you can use that as a systems check for left to right, because I think oftentimes whenever people are looking at hypertrophy, like looking at the aspects of mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and the accumulation of like muscle damage over the sets and over the workout as a whole. But like oftentimes you'll see most people going in, they'll start with their dominant side, they'll run that, and then they'll go right to the left side. And And it's less so, as you were saying, a muscular failure. It's just a systems failure
Yeah.
that we're fatiguing, and even if we're matching the reps for reps, but the quality of those reps have probably changed significantly, that you were able to get in some quality reps on the left side if you start with the right, but you're limiting the ability to get to that muscular failure because you've already accumulated fatigue of the system, not necessarily cardiovascular, but again, it's just your body's ability to switch the energy systems or to like augment the levels that it's using or percents in that switch. There is like fatigue induced, and there's a change in the system where it's having to like respond to these fluctuations. But by taking that break, you're restricting the need of that, where you're able to recover and put it to each system to check individually, not dependent on one and the other, just as an overall fatigue accumulation. So I like that thought process. Again, this is going to take longer if you're trying to run your sessions with that. So it's dramatically going to increase your gym time. So realize that if you're trying to implement it, that you need to be thoughtful on that. You need to be mindful of how you're going to introduce that. It would probably also speak to like, hey, you probably don't need 3 sets of curls and you probably don't need 12 exercises. Like maybe it's a conversation around let's reduce these so we can actually focus on the quality and getting to muscular failure and not just the accumulation of fatigue as a from a global perspective, because how much we're trying to do. But I think that's interesting and probably something that not a lot of people focus on. They're just trying to run right into one side to the other side and just run them back to back without allowing for some type of rest or recoverability in between sets to focus on a higher degree of quality and maintaining position, and not letting that dictate where we end up, but trying to stay closer to where we started so we can take advantage of the ability to like build muscle mass.
Yeah. It's kind of like it reminds us that we don't need as much fluff as like lands up in our programs as time kind of goes on. It's like it was a good reminder of like I can create so much tension, so much mechanical tension and metabolic stress from so little. Like there was a couple times I was like 1 to 2 sets in and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Just because I was able to create so much from that. I was like, I didn't need 3 sets. I didn't need 4 sets of certain things. I could create as much tension as it was required, that I could tap out on the muscular failure, not the system's failure, which I think the fluff tends to kind of like muddy the waters of sometimes, or gives us a false representation of like what failure can be. Like failure occurs eventually, even if it's at, whatever, 60, 70% over multiple sets. It's like you're going to get fatigued. It may not be like true failure, but like a fatigue will occur. There will be an accumulation of fatigue. It just may not be at like, I don't want to say optimal, but it may not be at like that top end of failure of what we're actually trying to get to. And I think that's a difficult it's a difficult thing to teach, and it's a difficult thing to kind of like comprehend if you've never really gone there.
And in that, I think it's also interesting of like just looking at the fluff and the ability to accumulate, like start feeling it within the first second set to help you cut out the fluff, is you operate in rep ranges, but again, understanding that those rep ranges are not only it gives you the capacity to work within this range, but it's also, if somewhere were to go and put a timer on that, that it's a guide to help you get to a certain amount of time that you're trying to work in. Because there's a
Every time
huge
out.
difference between if I have 12 reps on my sheet, on my template, and it takes me 12 to 15 seconds to complete that, opposed to 30, 45. You're going to find
Yeah.
out real quick what getting close to failure is, whenever it's not dictated just by the number, but there's an understanding of that number is supposed to get you close to this time under tension that we're going for, that kind of part of the whole basis of trying to get that mechanical tension, that metabolic stress, is that again, it's just a guide, but the time duration spent within reaching those reps is a lot more significant than what I think people look to whenever they see even those smaller rep ranges. And they still have an ability to put additional fluff into the program because it's probably less so on those longer durations within the reps and more so trying to put the rep to almost a second instead of double, 3 times that it should actually be.
Yeah, that's right. It's like the effective tension or the effective time under the tension of that rep is what we're trying to achieve to ultimately get into that. I kind of look at it from especially hypertrophy. It's like whatever, it's 35 to 50 seconds in the set, whatever it is. It's a time period within that. It's like I know within my first 2 reps if I'm connected. It's like I can feel it, dude. I get this little smile. It's the weirdest thing. I'm sadistic as fuck with my own body. But I know, like, if I'm locked in and I'm at a top working set and, like, it just hits and I'm in the right spot and everything's there and, like, that time under tension is correct and, like, the tempo's there and I'm just getting right, it's like, dude, I get this little smile. It's like the smile and I can kind of just, like, zone in into what I'm doing. It's like, I love that. It's like, I wish I could try and, like, explain that or replicate that to so many people. And I think the only way you do that is starting to play around with these types of things and like learning how to, learning what controlling a weight with a 2-second total time versus a 10-second total time is, or learning like going and doing purposeful overreach periods, or go and doing strength blocks, or go and do high rep blocks. It's like all of these, like all of the ability to go around and experiment on the best test subject that you will ever find, i.e. yourself. It's like that's vital information, in my opinion. It gives you so much feedback. It's like it's honest feedback because it's coming from you. It's like you know how you feel. You know what you're thinking. You know your limits. You know where maybe you're pushing out. It's like you can kind of give yourself a lot of data points, a lot of like feedback around these things to ultimately make you a better coach, to make you a better athlete, to make you a better programmer, to make you a better whatever you are in this fitness realm. It's like all of that information, all that data will be so much more effective if you do it on yourself first, and then you understand like how to then apply that to certain situations and certain cases.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge important aspect to this for us to like start closing out on is taking this information, don't leave it just in theory. Don't leave it just in like knowledge and words that you learned and like understanding it through that means. It's the actual application to be able to truly understand it and understand how to play with the principles and to apply them. I think that's something that we look to with, I think both of us got introduced into PSL1 whenever we did it, was it's taking this knowledge and directly applying it, because that's how you learn how it truly works. And that's how you understand the principles to a core level, that they're going to cross multiple mediums. And whenever you're applying them, they stay true and they don't deviate. They don't change. It's not an augment to a system because it is a core essential. It's something that really should be able to transcend just this one setting and be able to develop a narrative across multiple forms of application. But it's only in applying it that you can truly understand and you can truly be able to implement it for others if you've kind of gone through the trials and tribulations yourself and know when you can push it, whenever you can't, how you're going to be, what it takes to recover from it, how your body's going to respond to it, the frequency at which it can be introduced. So I think that is a good closing point for anybody listening, is that the note about applying it and understanding it, and not just leaving this information in your brain, but actually utilize it and develop it from the context that we've kind of set in this podcast.
Best way to end it. There comes down with the synopsis. On that note, guys, we will see you next weekend, next week, whenever you hear us again. Thanks for listening, and we appreciate you.